Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Oliver. I am a vintage compact collector and enthusiast, and I'm here today to tell you about some of the compacts that are in my collection. When I say that I collect vintage compacts, that encompasses a lot of things. Not only because compacts were categorized as a lot of things back then, such as carryalls and mini Adaires and this, that, and the other thing, but also because I've kind of branched out interests also into little perfume cases and pill boxes and cigarette cases and other things that are not quite cosmetics but are very similar. And we're going to talk about all of these things. The point of this channel is to get to share my enthusiasm about these things with you and hopefully get other people enthusiastic about something that they may not have known existed out there. Wanted to take a moment to interject to say this is the first video I ever tried using an actual microphone for, and I am very, very bummed that even though I did practice runs with my script, the audio did not come out good. And there are especially points where I am laughing or getting a little louder where it gets really grainy, and I did everything I could to try to fix it with what little I have learned about audio editing. Did not help. So I apologize for the audio. I truly hope that it is not unbearable. I put so much work into this video. I cannot just scrap it, but future videos will have better audio, and I am so sorry. One of my absolute favorite things about vintage compacts is trying to find out when they were made. I love their designs, I love seeing the makeup in them, I love all kinds of things, but going on a scavenger hunt to try to find information about a random compact that you found online or found in a vintage store is like such an absolute rush to me. I find it to be so fascinating. It's so much fun. You have to dive so deep to find this information, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. Today we're going to be talking about these two Volupte compacts, and it's really interesting because Volupte is often lauded as one of the big three compact manufacturers of the time, right up there with Evans and Elgin, but it's incredibly difficult to find information about them using free resources or even using books that I own. I don't have access to any of the paywalled newspaper archive sites yet, but through the Library of Congress and other people's blog posts and lots of scouring through other people's like Etsy and eBay posts, I brought up the best information that I was able to, but it's incredible how difficult it is. They don't even have a Wikipedia page. This is one of the most popular compact manufacturers of the time, and there's not a Wikipedia for them. That blows my mind. I will have all of my resources as well as the books that I used linked and listed in my description, so you can see exactly where I got my information from, as well as look at further information if you would like to for yourself. Now, this is the first carryall that I ever owned, and I made a video about it on Instagram a few years ago when I had no information about it at all, and a lot of people were interested in learning more. I was actually very amazed at how many people wanted to learn more about this. And so this was the original inspiration for this YouTube channel, and I thought it would be the perfect carryall to start this channel with, to start this conversation. I made my first short form video with it, so I'll make my first long form video with it, but there's a reason that we're talking about two compacts today. And it's not just that they both have very similar designs. Through the research in this video, I have come to realize that this is very, very likely to be, if not guaranteed to be, a counterfeit, not a real Volupte carryall. When I first started collecting, I was very, very much just interested in the fact that things existed. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm still guilty of that sometimes. I have ADHD, I am impulsive, and so I have made some impulse compact buys in my time. So this is not the only counterfeit in my collection. I also knew absolutely nothing about provenance or attribution or literally anything about actually collecting things when I started my collection. I just realized that I could collect them. I had known that vintage compacts existed for a long time. I found them to be absolutely fascinating, but I was like, I have no reason to have one of those. And then one day I was like, why do you need a reason? And then I was like, oh, and then I lost it. I was so excited and I did not do my research. So I'm hoping that other people will learn from my mistakes. Now, the reason that this is called a carryall is simply because it was designed to carry all that you needed. A lot of compacts at the time only held rouge or face powder, but this held face powder, rouge, a cream rouge to be used as lipstick. You can see a comb imprint, so this could have had a comb in there, and it's possible that it also was designed to hold cigarettes. I've seen several of these cases that hold cigarettes and that lighters actually go in the little square compartment, but there's also cases where a small short comb goes in that compartment. We will get more into all of these details as we go along. Now, the reason that we first suspect that this is a Volupte carryall is because it plainly says Volupte USA on the powder cover. The first place that I go to when I start researching is the index of my books. I have them all listed in the description, and if you are interested in getting into vintage compact collecting, I very highly recommend these books because they have a lot of information. They have important patents, they have old advertisements, and some of them are newer newer editions of old ones, but that comes with new information, which is really helpful. I find these books to be an incredibly helpful jumping off point to start doing further research. I'd also like to say before we get further into this that there's actually quite a bit of debate about how volupte is pronounced. Some people say it's volupt. Some of my books spell out that it's supposed to be Volupe, and then some people, like me, say Volupte. Now, the reason that I'm confident that it's supposed to be Volupte is actually because thanks to a YouTuber uploading this video 12 years ago, we can actually see an old vintage Volupte advertisement where they are pronouncing it, and I will play that for you now.
It's Tupperware's 10th birthday, and you're getting the present. This is it. If you go to a Tupperware party between now and May 6th, as one of the first 12 guests, you'll receive a lovely costume pin by Volupte. Or, as a hostess, a beautiful Volupte compact, plus the regular hostess gift. Call your Tupperware dealer or find Tupperware in the yellow pages under housewares or plastics. Or write Tupperware, Orlando, Florida, so you can help celebrate our birthday by accepting a lovely gift.
I think it's really fascinating that these were being given out as rewards for being a Tupperware hostess when Tupperware was one of the original MLMs. So these were essentially like a sign-up reward for being a Tupperware hostess, which I find to be absolutely fascinating. In future videos, I would like to talk a lot more about different ways that these compacts were ingrained in everyday life and in like society. I've seen that there were car dealerships that would get cheap compacts and engrave them with the name and information of the car dealership to try to like gain favor with the lady of the house so that her husband would be more likely to buy a car. We know that they were popular as gifts from like romantic partners and parents and loved ones, but also like I saw this advertisement from April of 1945 where it was being advertised that you should buy a compact for your graduating girl so that she could have a happy, normal graduation during wartime. I'm not at all surprised at all, literally at all, that they were using makeup to try to distract from war fear. We do currently have people trying to sell face serums to help you with the stress of witnessing ongoing. So nothing has really changed, but I find it to be very, very interesting the ways that this was generally ingrained in society in ways that we don't see now. Like, unless you sign up with a makeup MLM, you're not getting makeup as a sign-up reward. Unless I'm really out of touch and they're giving you Sephora for signing up with Modere these days. I don't know. I don't even know what Modere sells. Is Modere makeup? I don't even know. Oh, another interesting thing is that I found a blurb in my book talking about how the war, it was like, it used to be your responsibility if you were going to a tea party, you had to bring your own like sugar and coffee and this, that, and the other thing. And so my book said that there were women who were starting to use their like cleaned out compact cases as sugar cube holders for when they went to social gatherings. So I just find it very interesting all of the different ways that they were using these compacts. In the book Compacts, Powder, and Paint, I found several photos of similar looking Volupte compacts to the one that I have. In this first photo, you can see a slightly different model, but the second photo looks nearly identical, down to the spring that pops the compact open. This feature is very unique, as many compacts had hinges with no springs. In this third picture, and several I'll show you later, you can actually see the carryall also being used as a cigarette case. At the time, it was not known how dangerous smoking was, at least not to the general public, and a lot of people still saw it as really fashionable and sociable, so being able to carry your cigarettes with you would have been a very important part of a carryall. Now, I knew from when I first bought this that this was called a swing lock mechanism, and it's called that simply because the lock swings off. I find that absolutely so much fun. I love it. I've read in many places that Volupte actually patented the swing lock, but I have not been able to find any information about the patent. I was really hoping that finding the patent information would help me find an inventor, help me find the names of people associated with it, help me at least find when the swing lock was started so that we had like a solid starting range. But I cannot find any information about this, and the earliest advertisement I could find was from the 40s. As an interesting side note, apparently Revlon later also sold their own swing lock mechanism case, but because this was patented by Volupte and never known to be created by anybody else, it's suspected that these Revlon cases were actually like manufactured by Volupte for Revlon. As I was looking to find other swing locks that had the same design as mine, I was able to find that this particular carryall was called a Sophisticase. Now, as far as I can tell, the Sophisticate itself wasn't patented patented or created by Volupte. The earliest advertisement I can find is from November 4th, 1934, from a different brand, and it is said that it is already popular in London, Paris, the Riviera, so it was already a hit elsewhere. I think that what Volupte did is take a very popular design that other people were using and then add their patented swing lock to make something that was unique to them. The earliest advertisement I could find for a Volupte Sophisticase was from 1939, but it wasn't a swing lock. It seems that the swing locks were popularized from the 40s to the 60s. According to a post on Better Dresses Vintage, the swing lock Sophisticases specifically were advertised from 1943 to the 1960s. Something interesting about Volupte is that their compacts were usually advertised as being nail friendly and like easy to open, but the Sophisticases were meant to be a step up from that, with everything being able to only be opened with your thumb. The powder case has a latch. The swing lock itself is easy to open with your thumb. And then to get into the rouge compartment, you just lift the little tip right there with your thumb. I think the hardest part to get into is the mirror, but it might not be so difficult if you had some cigarettes behind there pushing it out. Now, in several photos from my books, we can see some of the original boxes for these swing lock Sophisticases. And between these and several ads found online, you can really see the variety of designs that these cases came in. It kind of just makes me want a swing lock Sophisticase collection. Like, the ones with the little rhinestones are so pretty. According to a post on makeitmuseum.org, these Sophisticases often had a little black bag that they came with so that they could be carried like a purse. I can see that in several pictures in my books and on other people's blog posts, you can see the cases for these, and they're absolutely beautiful. Now, I do not have the case for this, but that alone is not necessarily an indicator that it's a counterfeit. It is not unusual for pieces to become separated from compacts over time. A lot of compacts are missing their powder puffs. Some of them are even missing their entire like metal inside structure. It's just the shell of the case itself. So that alone is not necessarily an indicator that it's a counterfeit. I'm actually pretty certain that if somebody was going to make a believable counterfeit, it would have had to include one of those black cases. If that is how they initially came and people were used to seeing that on the market, it probably would have had one of those. Because these Sophisticases came in such a wide variety of designs and they were advertised across such a wide date range, there were a few things that I needed to know to hopefully find some more specific information. The first is when the brand was started and when it was dissolved, and I needed to see if I could find any inventors, designers, or anybody else who was creating for the company at the time. So Volupte was founded in either 1920 or 1926 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I cannot find the exact date literally anywhere. The Library of Congress is missing the main Elizabeth, New Jersey newspaper that was running from 1868 to 1960. They have a newspaper from previous to the 1920s, and they have one from after the 1960s, but the main newspaper that would have been running at the during the entire time that this company was, that I could have maybe found any announcements or advertisements in when this company started, is missing. I did put in a research request with the historian at the Elizabeth Public Library, but I don't even know where I am in the research queue. It is a first come, first serve basis, and so if I ever do hear back, if I ever get any further information about specific dates or names or anything like that, I'll make a follow-up video. But for now, this is the best that I was able to find. Now, according to a blog post by Collecting Vintage Perfume Atomizers, Volupte was a division of the Superior Products Corporation, and they had this advertisement of a Volupte compact sold by the Superior Products Corporation that I have not been able to find a date for. This blog post itself is actually really interesting because it goes over some of the history of Volupte starting out in making perfume atomizers, because they made a lot more than just compacts. And these pictures were some of what helped me confirm that my carryall is indeed a counterfeit. So we will be coming back to this later, but this is a very interesting blog post if you're interested in giving it a read. Now, according to this blog, WorthPoint, and the blog Collecting Vintage Compacts, Volupte was later purchased by Shields Incorporated of Attleboro, Massachusetts in 1957 and ceased operations by the 60s. I would also like to just give a shout out to Collecting Vintage Compacts. They have so much information on their blog. I accidentally stole their name at the beginning of this. When I started this YouTube channel, I at first called it Collecting Compacts, and I was like, no, that doesn't quite have like what I'm looking for. And then I was like, ooh, Collecting Vintage, I'm gonna name it Collecting Vintage Compacts, even though I've been reading this blog for like 2 years now. It didn't occur to me that that is literally already a blog. And then I posted on Instagram that I was going to start posting on YouTube. And then the day that I posted that link, I was looking at it and I was like, wait. And I realized that I had literally stolen their name. So I apologize to collecting vintage compacts. They have been doing this for way longer than I have. They have a lot more information than I do. You should absolutely check out their blog, and that is why my name on here changed, if you noticed that, because I accidentally stole their freaking name and I feel terrible about it. So please go check out Collecting Vintage Compacts, the actual Collecting Vintage Compacts. They do absolutely amazing work. The post on Collecting Vintage Compacts where they mentioned the Volupte acquisition is actually very interesting, and I'm gonna have to read off of my notes here or I'm never going to get this correct, so please forgive me. But the post is primarily about the history of the Philquick compact band. The Philquick compact brand, which once made a case design that was bought and then marketed by Volupte. Philquick then rebranded to Shields in 1936. Shields was bought out by Rexco in 1939, but remained being called Shields Incorporated. And then they bought out Volupte in 1957, which means that in a very roundabout way, they bought back their own Philquick compact that they had sold to Volupte. They bought back the rights to that because they bought out Volupte. I just think that that's really interesting. One of my newer editions of my books actually addresses part of why it's so hard to find information about some of these old brands, and it specifically is talking about Volupte, which I find interesting. And it attributes so much changing of hands between companies as one of the reasons it's so hard to find these histories. The book affirms that Philquick became Shields and that Rexco bought out Shields, but then it says that Volupte then bought Shields and Rexco later, which evidentially we know is not true because there are Shields and Rexco products that continued to be on the market for way longer than Volupte continued to exist. So that's just not true. There's also this article from Press of Atlantic City that I wasn't able to access due to a paywall, but you can see in the blurb here that they also said that Volupte closed in the mid-60s. But then another blog that I saw said that they closed in the 50s. The latest advertisement that I could find for them was from December of 1961. The reason that I bring all of this up is just to show how confusing this research can be to do, and that even in what should be reliable sources, there can be misinformation. And so take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I could be wrong about everything. I hope I'm not. I've done very meticulous research. I'm going to link it all so you can see it for yourself. But it is so hard to find some of this information that everybody could be wrong. I'm really, really hoping that the historian has some amazing information for me that I will be able to make a follow-up video on. This is the frustration of trying to piece together the past sometimes, is that you want to have solid information. You want to know things, or at least I do. I want to know things. I don't want to just have conjecture. I don't want to have hypotheses. I want to know. And sometimes you can't. You cannot know. Anyway, now that we know that Volupte was started in either 1920 or 1926 and ran until the 60s, that gives us a solid date range for any Volupte compact that was made. Buddy! I bet you he's screaming at the sun. It's sunny out and he doesn't like sun rays, so he literally screams at them until they go away. As for designers for Volupte, the only person I've been able to find any information on was a man named Richard T. Gage. Now, something that's really interesting is that Richard T. Gage was a part of a Museum of Modern Art exhibition called Useful Objects of American Design Under $10, and you can still find the accompanying pamphlet digitized online. The exhibition ran from November 26th to December 24th, 1940, and Richard was listed 4 times, numbers 169 through 172, and he was credited with having designed a round red compact, a cigarette case, a red palette-shaped compact, and a black cigarette case, all manufactured by Volupte. I tried to find pictures or information about these specific cases or pictures from this exhibit, but I wasn't able to. But I just think that that was like really cool. That was a very cool find. I also found this index of patents from 1939 where he had quite a few designs patented for Volupte. And by looking up the actual specific patent numbers, we're able to see the designs that he created, which I have got to find another adjective other than cool. I found this to be immensely satisfying. I next looked to see if I could find anybody selling any compacts that were attributed to him online currently, and I was able to find quite a few, but it looks like he primarily specialized in enamel and in like painting designs, not necessarily anything that was a swing lock or a Sophisticase or anything that we're looking for. So this was a dead end, but it was really cool to be able to find information about anybody who was creating for Volupte at the time. Now, I know my research is kind of jumping all over the place. I'm trying to piece back together both how I did the research and also make make it make sense to y'all, because sometimes you find a piece of information that doesn't fit where you found it and you have to go back and put it elsewhere. So sorry I'm like jumping all over the place. I hope that this makes sense. My son. Why are you being a noisy boysy? This is the baby. He's screaming at the sunlight. I'm gonna wait for him to scream again because I know he's going to. Anyway, as I was looking in my books, I found this picture of a Volupte triple vanity. In the notes, it says that they solved the lack of lipstick tube room by using a cream rouge instead as lip coloring. Now, this is what I believe is in mine. This led me to believe that this might have come from post-1934 when this style became popular. You'll see Sophisticaces that both have lipstick tubes and that have these cream rouges going through multiple points of time. So I thought that maybe at least it could be from after 1934. Online, I also found this advertisement from 1937 of a Sophisticase with an incredibly similar inside to mine, and you can see cigarettes behind the mirror, so it's being used as a cigarette case. Now, this actually has a very, very important clue, so we are also going to come back to this picture later. Unfortunately, this is about the end of the line for the research on this compact. The best I can estimate is that it's maybe from post-1934 when both styles of lipstick were being created, but that could put it anywhere from 1934 to whenever in the 1960s Volupte stopped manufacturing makeup compacts. Now, the absolute last hint that I had about this compact and that I looked into that I initially thought might have just been a design difference is the fact that in this carryall, the E in Volupte is missing an accent. My first thought was that companies change names, change designs, etc. I have a compact that I was able to help date specifically because it has US and Paris on it, so you can tell that it was created after that brand moved to their Paris offices and was also creating in Paris. So there are all kinds of different things that can help you see, okay, this is a reason this label changed, this is a reason this label changed, whatever. So naively, at first I was like, maybe they just didn't used to put an accent over the E. It's not actually a French company, even though it's based off of a French word. Maybe they just spelled it wrong. Maybe they didn't used to have an accent. That was just naivety. But I started looking at all of the earliest advertisements that I could find, hoping to find pictures of a compact that didn't have an E. Now, in these early advertisements, a lot of them coming from the Collecting Vintage Perfume Atomizers blog we talked about earlier, you can see that in print advertisements, there wasn't an accent over the E. And that fueled my naive hope for about 5 minutes until I saw that every single actual atomizer on the blog, even the really old ones, they all have an accent over the E. Every compact I have found a picture of, every carryall I have found a picture of, everything has an accent over the E. Now, I tried to convince myself for like half a second that maybe the engraving had just rubbed off, maybe it was just like, maybe there's a scratch there's no scratch there. I'm literally just making things up so that I wouldn't have to face that I had made a mistake. But I made a mistake. It's a counterfeit. And the nail in the coffin for this was this 1942 Vogue advertisement that has a little blurb that very clearly says, "The genuine is engraved Volupte." It was a big enough issue that they had to put it in their advertisements. Don't buy a fake one. So, I mean, I gotta give it to the people who made this. They engraved Volupte in there. They did it. They did their job. They just didn't do the accent. Genuinely, if they had put an accent over that E, I would probably believe forever that this is a real Volupte compact. So this is from maybe 1934 through the early 60s, but also knowing that it's a counterfeit, who's to say that this wasn't made in the 70s to fool compact collectors? Because that was already a thing at the time. I don't believe anything anymore. Anyway, learn from my mistakes, kids. Do not buy a Volupte compact that does not say Volupte with the frickin', I don't know what that accent is called, but it goes like that. Anyway, as I was researching my fake carryall, I pulled out this compact for some more information. This compact very clearly still has the accent over the E. So when I still naively believed that maybe it was a design choice, I thought that maybe if I could see some differences between these two, it would give me a clue as to when that decision was made. As you can see, this compact has another swing lock design, and this is just a compact, not a carryall, because it only holds face powder. Now, it has this absolutely gorgeous scallop scallop design on the edge. And one of the differences between this compact and the Carryall is that when you pop off the swing lock, there's no spring on the inside, so it won't move on its own and you have to open it the way that you would most other compacts. I still think that that spring is a really fun thing. You can also see that the swing lock on the Carryall is damaged and bent, whereas the swing lock on this compact is still in absolutely beautiful, perfect condition. This compact is missing its sifter, but it still has its puff and what I believe is its original case. And in order to tell you about the case, I actually would like to read you a few funny excerpts from one of my compact books, because let me tell you, they do not hold back on roasting some of these designs. These enthusiasts, they will let you know if they don't like something. One of the things that they say is that Volupte deserves a mention for their consistency of design and handsome presentation boxes, but also in using ill-fitted cloth carriers that were glued rather than sewn and not always suited to its case. Another blurb that I enjoyed was when they were talking about how compacts were growing bigger to accommodate more things, and they said the tolerance level of size and weight was finally reached in the 50s with the Volupte Super Carryalls, which appeared headed toward bread box dimensions. If you look up Volupte Super Carryalls, they're like twice as big as, they're huge. They are huge. As you can see, the case for this is sewn, not glued. I don't know enough about the history of these cases. There's not as much information out there as there is for the compacts to know if sometimes they sewed them, if sometimes they glued them. I have another interjection. As I was editing this video, I was actually taking a closer look at the details of the black purse cases that I was showing earlier in the video, and several of them show stitching and show that these cases were sewn. So while there's not a lot of information out there, there is evidence that Volupte both glued and sewed their cases. So I'm not quite sure what this blurb is talking about, but there is evidence that Volupte sewed their cases. So I feel better about that. Maybe this person just had a personal vendetta. As we've seen, sometimes there can be misinformation. Maybe this person got a few compacts that had glued cases and they really, really hated them. Maybe this was personally made for this compact. I don't believe that's the case because it appears to be dead stock. It doesn't appear to have ever been used and it still has its information slip inside. And so it would be very weird to me if somebody made a perfectly snug fitting case for a compact that was never used, but it is a possibility. Several cases of this shape and size show up in my books, all with varying levels of detail and design, just like with the Sophista cases. In this advertisement from Harper's Bazaar featuring Rita Hayworth, it shows a very similar swing lock compact with a different motif on top. Now, something notable and interesting is that in this advertisement, it says that this is a genuine collector's item. Volupte was way ahead of the times in creating often novelty compacts like this compact of Marie Antoinette's desk, and these were designed to be collected. Instead of just creating cases so that people would have a case for their makeup or try to buy the nicest thing to show off to their friends and get other people to buy, they actively encourage people to buy multiple different makeup cases and display them in their homes, which is absolutely wild considering I now have a bunch of makeup cases displayed in my home. They were on top of collecting before other people realized that these were going to be collector's items. And the fact that they remain one of the most popular and collected manufacturers is amazing. Now, the last and possibly most interesting thing about this compact is that it still has its order form on the inside when you open up the compact. That is so cool. I absolutely love it. And this has some very, very important information. Now, the reason that this order form is so important is not just because it's a very interesting piece of history, but because it gives you the address to order replacement puffs for your compact. And that address is P.O. Box 204, Elizabeth, New Jersey. You may have noticed that in some of these advertisements, they list an address for Volupte, and that address is listed as 347 Fifth Avenue, New York, which I found out while researching this, that building is for sale right now, which was so weird. So if anyone's looking to buy a historical building in New York, that's available. I even found another person's order form showing the 347 Fifth Avenue address, which shows that at some point they were filling out orders out of their New York address, not their New Jersey address. And this is where the Vanities of 1937 advertisement comes back into play, because when you look at this advertisement for the Vanities of 1937, it lists Volupte's address as 347 Fifth Avenue, New York. That means that by 1937, Volupte was operating out of New York. That is an incredibly strong clue. That means that there is a possibility that this specific case comes from before 1937, when Volupte was still operating out of New Jersey. Now, with the case being sewn instead of glued, and the fact that I couldn't find any swing lock advertisements for the 1930s, there are quite a few possibilities here. It's possible that this is the real deal and that there just are no advertisements that I could find from the 1930s, but that doesn't mean that the swing lock wasn't made then. It's entirely possible that this is the real deal, but somebody made this little case for it because it was in their collection previously and they wanted to have it protected. It's entirely possible that the order form and the case were both slipped in there and the compact itself is real, but all of the other identifying information I have is wrong because somebody just wanted to make it look more authentic online. It's entirely possible that they were still fulfilling orders in New Jersey even when they had their Manhattan address for a time. I don't know if the Manhattan address was a storefront, a distribution center, a set of offices, all of the above. I haven't been able to find that information. And so it's entirely possible that there was a span of time where they were both filling orders from their New Jersey address and from their Manhattan address, and that whatever you got on your order form was wherever you sent your refills to. There's a lot of possibilities here, and unfortunately, without being able to find more information, I'm not going to be able to know for certain. I don't find it to be likely that somebody threw together a whole case and put in an order form that wasn't really for this and all of this just to sell this for $30 online. Like, I feel like if you were going to go to that effort, you could get more money out of it, making it look like the real deal. But yeah, I do believe that this is a real Volupte swing lock. I believe that the order form is original. I can't imagine why somebody would make a case for this if they weren't actually using it. And so there are a lot of possibilities here. Well, it's disappointing to not be able to get a much more exact range because that is what I prefer and that's what I've been able to do with other compacts in my collection. I do believe that this is the real deal, and I believe that it was made really anywhere between either 1920 and 1926 when the company was founded, and 1937 to the early 1940s when Volupte probably would have ceased operations out of their New Jersey address because everything was being attributed to their Manhattan address. I know that that's still a really large date range, but narrowing it down to 20 years instead of the entire 40-year range of the company is still something. As for this one, it's really anyone's guess. If it was made at the time that Volupte was producing things, which I think is the most likely, then it was probably made between 1934 and the 1960s, which is another huge date range, but sometimes that's the best you can do, and that's what we've got for this one. And I promise you in future videos, we are going to get much, much more specific, but I had a lot of fun researching these. And I thought, as a final note for this video, we would swatch the rouge and the lipstick that are inside of the carryall, because I think that seeing the colors is really fun and really interesting. Now, I've done this in the past with Q-tips, but we didn't have any Q-tips at the time that I was filming this video, so I did just dip my whole gloved finger in there. It felt a little bit sacrilegious, and I was actually really surprised at how hard it was. Like, it was very hardened, which shouldn't surprise me, but it did surprise me. I'd never actually touched it with my finger before. But yeah, this is what the lipstick looks like. This is the color of the lipstick. And then the rouge, I broke. This broke during our move. When I first bought this, this rouge was intact, and I did cry when I opened this and saw that the makeup had broken, which I know is silly, but I really, really, really love my compact collection, and that remains true even if this one is a counterfeit. So when I saw that that rouge broke when we moved, I was very, very sad, but I was still able to get a swatch, and this is what that rouge looks like. If you have made it this far, thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for listening to my rambling thoughts as I tried to bring this to a conclusion and show you how I arrived to the ideas that I did about where and when these are from. I hope that you found this interesting. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, concerns, anything you want to know for the future, please let me know. I don't have a schedule for my videos planned. I'm chronically ill and disabled, and I live at the mercy of my body. And I really want to make sure I am putting out quality videos over putting out just like a large quantity of videos. And so for me, that is going to look like having to take my time with things. So I don't know when my next video will be up. I'm really hoping it will be soon. I'm hoping it's going to be within the next month. I'm already working on research for it. But yeah, I really hope that you stick around. I hope you subscribe if you're interested in, and you can hang around with my inconsistent schedule. I think we've got some really, really interesting conversations to have. I'm very, very interested to talk about this stuff, and I'm very thankful for you. If you're here, if you've watched this whole thing, if you've enjoyed it, thank you. If you somehow, like, listen, if you are one of my 29 subscribers and you are like the descendant of the owners of Volupte, please reach out to me. Please reach out to me. Let me know. Let me know what information you have. If I hear back from the historian at the Elizabeth, I ran out of storage at the literal last possible second. Thank you for watching this. Please subscribe if you're interested. Let me know anything you want to know in the future, and I will see you later. Thank you. Thanks.